Hi everyone, my name is Deanna, and I want to dedicate today's video to talk about this series. It's going to be a very mini series that's dedicated on my post-grad diaries. Today's video, I want to talk about my reflection on higher education. And let's get started. Get a cup of coffee, your tea, some water. So this is going to be a pretty long video, but it's going to be a very great and fruitful reflection. Okay, so to start off, what brought me into going into college? So that journey starts all the way back into high school. Everyone around me knew I was going to go to college, and almost all of us knew we were going to go, like the group of my friends that I was with at the time. I was part of MECHA, and my MECHA advisor really pushed us into going into college. He would take us to college tours, and we would go to different MECHA conferences locally in Northern California, because that's where I'm from. So it was always influenced around me. I was always surrounded by people who went to college or college settings, academia. So it wasn't foreign to me to know about school. Like I was going to go. That was a given to me that I was going to college. And the really big, fruitful experience that I had was there was a local university in Northern California that was doing a survey on people of color from lower income communities, me. And they did a study that was around maybe 10 years. So I was doing it for a very long time. And the very first time I did it, which is the first day what part of my journey matters is they went up to me and they asked me a list of like 100 questions. Most of them were very repetitive. And one of the genre of questions was, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And then there was a list of, you're going to get an AA, a high school. Sorry, it starts off with high school diploma, AA transfer, 4-year college, private university, JD, PhD. And then I asked, because those were the last two on the bottom of that list. And I asked, what is JD? Oh, it's a law degree. Why is it not just called law degree? I was 10 years old at the time. I didn't know. So they explained it to me in very like small words, right? Small talk. Then I was like, what's a PhD? Oh, that's like the highest advanced level of academic level you can go to. I was like, well, I want to do that. And they were like, oh, wow. They were really surprised with that. I'm 10 years old and I'm like saying, I'm going to do that. But I knew it. I knew I was going to do something big in my life. And I just wasn't sure what it was going to be, but I just knew this was going to be my start. And fast forward all those years later, here I am graduating for my master's degree. So, I look back at that experience that I had for the first time, and I really do have like a moment to like reflect and think that I was exposed to that this research program was like kind of planting those seeds of college outside of, my Metro advisor influencing me on that and the college tours that I was doing. It was given that I was going to go. And like I said, fast forward to today, I am the first one in my family, the first woman in my family to graduate from a 4-year university after going to a community college. So I started and then going for a master's degree. Two really big accomplishments. The first one in my family to get a master's degree, the first woman to get a bachelor's. My brother was the first one. He's just a year older than me, so he got his bachelor's first, then I got my bachelor's. And now we're here reflecting on my master's degree experience, thinking, wow, I didn't apply for a PhD. But that's what this video is dedicated for, is to talk about how going to the journey for a PhD is not linear. There's a lot of roads, there's a lot of paths, there's a lot of ups and downs, curves that you go through. And that's what I want to take a moment to reflect on today, is that going higher education is not linear. Your life goals are not linear. There's always going to be some sort of like adventure that you go through. So now to start with the rigorous long timeline of mine. I graduated from high school, went straight to a 4-year university. But when I talk about my life, I always like to express that I don't feel like my experience is very unique. It's not very like a back to back kind of experience. I just wanted to give that like warning. It's not really a trigger warning, but it's like a warning. My academic experience is very unique, and I'm hoping to enlighten people into a new experience that, it's not as cookie cutter as you think. So let's get started. Sorry, I keep going around the wrong, round and around, but let's get started with that. I graduated high school, went straight to a 4-year university, the local one that's in my city. But my mom got sick the first year, so it was a lot of pressure to try to balance like school because it's a whole new life, a culture, language. I'm bilingual and I mostly speak Spanish, even though I don't have an accent. But I didn't know what sarcasm was until I was like 25 years old. I just couldn't understand it. I couldn't hear it. And I just realized, like, like this is a whole new life experience, and I'm going to college and I'm trying to balance that and my life experience at home because my mom got really sick. And I didn't know how to balance everything. And I felt very overwhelmed. I also was not passing my classes because, like I said, I wasn't understanding of the culture of studying. I had to study a lot more than I used to. Even though I did have decent grades in high school, I had to study a lot more. I had to put in more work, and I didn't know what I was doing. So I just felt like it was too much for me to carry, but I didn't want to finish. I didn't want to just quit. I didn't have a backup plan. I didn't know, I didn't even have a job. So I thought, well, let me just go to my local community college. I can walk to my local community college from my house if need to be. I can take the bus, and it would be like a 30-minute commute on the bus. It's a 5-minute drive, but I didn't have my license in the moment. It was an hour and 30 minutes to walk if I had to. So, it was more accessible to me than going to my state university, which was a little bit longer for me. And since I didn't have a license, I thought, let me just start ground up. And in my high school, I didn't take any English classes, like typical, like, you take a class, you learn grammar, vocabulary, you discuss a book, you write essays, a typical English class. My classes weren't like that. So I didn't even have basic English writing skills. So it was a very difficult experience for me to adapt, but I didn't want to give up. So I went to my local community college and I started from the ground up. Take me to the lowest English class you can, and I worked my way up. Same thing with math. And back in the day, because things have changed very fast, you used to take entry level exams, SATs, ACTs here in California, in order for them to place you into the math and English classes that are based on your scores. And I scored very low. So I accepted my fate. I was like, okay, if this is what it is, that's fine. Let me work my way up because I know my high school experience was very different. So I didn't have the skills. I didn't feel confident, and I was okay with that. So I worked my way down up, and I went from 1 year in the state university to 4 years in my local community college. And the reason it took me a really long to pass, it wasn't because I was starting from ground up in English. It was my math classes. What was going on during my math courses is I would have a math exam after working a graveyard shift. This is after I started working. And I would work at a gas station and I would have my exam the next day. So that means like I already stayed up for all of the 8 hours you can think of. And I had my exam like an hour after my work shift. So I fell asleep during my exams. I tried to talk to my professors and say, hey, by any chance, could I take the test a day after? And he said no. And he asked why, and I told him I have my graveyard shift, and then I have to come straight to class the next day. I'm falling asleep, and also you're not giving us the study guide until the day before. So my night shift was on Thursday. He gave us the study exam on Wednesday. So it just wasn't working enough for me, especially when I was sleep deprived. And his response was, you don't have any real responsibilities to worry about. All you have to do is worry about going to college and partying. You don't know what real life issues are. That was his response to me. And I saw how he was later on being accommodating with another student because they got in an accident. So they got more flexibility with their testing, but I didn't. When I also had to pay a car and car insurance, so It just felt like I wasn't getting the support that I needed. And that happened on more than one occasion. So there was occasions where my jobs weren't flexible with my school schedules, where they would tell me it's either you change your school schedule or this is your last week of work. And that happened so many times. Every time I would schedule something, it would happen, and I was always on edge, and it just delayed me so much because I wasn't ready to take the next level of math. So I would just wait another semester until I found a more accessible job or an accessible schedule. So it worked vice versa. Sometimes my professors weren't accommodating, sometimes my job wasn't accommodating, and it took me a very long time. It wasn't until COVID that I finally passed all my statistics classes. And believe it or not, out of all the math I've ever taken, statistics was so easy for me. I think it was all the wording, the like word problems and hypothetical reasoning that to me it was so easy for me to understand, and I just clicked on it. But when I saw numbers, I just froze. So when during COVID, I was taking my exams, and like my professor, he didn't know how to use Canvas. So I would print out the exam, do it on paper, submit it, and he would give us grades. By the end of the semester, I passed it and I went back to my 4 year university. So fast forward 1 year in a 4 year university, I drop out. Then I go to 4 years in my local community college, and now I'm back in state university. But it's COVID. So COVID happens, and I'm just kind of balancing everything, like, when are we going to go back to the reality, the normal? And sorry. And I was just kind of like, I was doing really good in school. All I was focusing on were my major classes. But before COVID happened, it was like a couple of months prior, I was getting ready to transfer. I was getting all my paperwork. I was talking to my local, advisors, like counselors, and asking them, hey, am I ready to transfer? They said yes. And I wasn't even getting a certificate or an associate's or anything. I was just getting my basic general ed classes to transfer. And that's one of my biggest regrets. I wish I got an associate's. Especially during COVID, I really wish I did that instead of going to my 4 year university. So before, I transferred to my 4 year, I was talking to my advisors, getting all my ducks in a row. And then I went to my local state university and I told them, hey, I'm interested in graphic design. So I talked to the graphic design advisor there, and he was very discouraging. And he said, this program is highly competitive. It's going to take you 3 years instead of two to graduate. You might have to take out a loan, especially if you're saying that your financial aid is kind of coming to an end. And there's no guarantee that you're going to get in if you don't have a portfolio. And I was just like, oh my God, I'm not ready for this. I took all the basic classes to transfer to a state university, but I didn't have the basic classes. I didn't have a portfolio class or a portfolio. So I couldn't really pursue this path. And that is one of my biggest regrets. I wish I slowed down and I got my associates in graphic design. That, like, I still carry it to this day, and that was years ago. That is a big regret of mine. So I felt very discouraged. I didn't know what to do. I was walking around my state university, kind of lost and confused. And then I remembered my very first college professor. She was this Native American woman, and I really connected with her so much on everything. So I was walking around saying, what if by some chance I find her? What if I run into her? And I did. And she wasn't a professor anymore. She became the chair of the Department of Ethnic Studies. And I was really happy for her. We caught up, and then she said, what are you doing here? Like, shouldn't you have graduated? Like, let's talk a little bit more. And I told her about my whole academic experience. And she said, no, I understand. Sometimes we do need to take time away in order to help our families. I said, thank you for understanding. And then she said, well, what's your major going to be in? What are you transferring in? And I told her what just happened with the graphic design department. And she said, let me look at your transcript. So she's looking at my transcript, and she said, well, you have all the general ed classes, and you can transfer in and claim this as your major if you want in ethnic studies. I didn't know what else to do. It was either I stay a little bit longer in my local community college using my college funding at the community college level, or take my chances in a 4 year in ethnic studies. So I decided to invest my time in that, and I went into that path. She was very encouraging, very supportive. I finished my 2 years. It was a year and a half online, and my last semester was in person, but it was still kind of like rough. Some people didn't want to go back in person because a lot of people moved away from the city. They were living a state away. So, because of COVID. So, it's just very unique situations for a lot of people. So, some professors were online, some professors were in person. Um, and I graduated in person, which I was very grateful for having that experience. I graduated with honors, with awards. I was also a part of a research program, and I published an academic article in something I was interested in. And this research program was also helping me to apply to PhDs, something that I've been looking into since I was a child. So I applied for a ton of PhDs, and they paid for everything, masters and PhDs. I applied, and I got a lot of support on the application process. And let's see, I think roughly, maybe I applied to 12 schools, maybe 13. It's around 10 I applied to schools because they paid for everything. So I was like, why not? So I applied for a ton of universities. I had like a spreadsheet. They prepared me. And one of my professors from the ethnic studies department, she walked me through how to apply to universities using her alma mater. And honestly, I really loved UC Berkeley's graduate application website that they have. They have so many handouts, so many examples. There is just so helpful. So she used that to help me to like apply to Berkeley, and I did apply to Berkeley. But she said use those skills for other schools too, and I did. So I applied to a ton of schools, and then I started getting my acceptances and my rejections as well, because that's normal. You get rejections and acceptances. And I think I got like maybe four acceptances or three, four or three. And they were all in master's programs. I didn't get into any PhD program. And I wondered why. Like, why not? And what I noticed, because things change a lot. So when I applied for PhDs, that was in the the fall of 2021 to, and I got the acceptances in the spring of 2022. So around that time frame. What I noticed is I saw a lot of people get accepted in these PhD programs. I looked at their websites of the students who got accepted. Almost all of them had master's degrees prior to getting a PhD. I noticed that as a pattern. It was a lot of different diverse like backgrounds, but they had masters. And I'm thinking, I don't think it's as linear as you think anymore, where you can go straight from an undergrad straight to a PhD. I think it's highly competitive. Some people do get into it, some people don't. But maybe that's the pattern I'm looking into. So I might have to start off with a master's and then eventually go for a PhD. So I got accepted into four master's programs, but I deferred all of them. I got into a car accident. It was a hit and run, and there was a lot of issues with insurance. And I just felt very overwhelmed with that while also trying to graduate for my bachelor's degree. So it was just too much for me to handle at once. Everyone in my family was kind of panicking over the situation. And I just thought, okay, I got to do what's in my control. Let me just finish with my bachelor's first. I'll take some time off, and if I have to pay out of pocket, then I will. But I don't want to accept any schools without having a car, because living in California, you need a car for anything. The transportation system's not the most reliable, but I decided to delay. So while I delayed, I had two gap year, and I was okay with that. And I got accepted into another research program, and they helped me apply to graduate programs as well. They were very hands on with the workshops and trying to make sure that I get accepted into these programs. And this time I said, okay, let me apply to less schools, but with more intention. Quality over quantity, right? So I think I applied to maybe five. And out of the five, I got accepted into two. And I applied to more safe schools. I applied to more master's programs. I applied to only three PhD programs. I think I applied to six schools, two or three, something like that. So it's either five or six schools, and I got three acceptances. And the other three of them were in master's programs, and I got accepted to the same programs I applied prior. But I got accepted to my local master's program in my local state university. But there was some advice that I was given. This was back in the day, right? I was told, where do you want to work? Well, I want to work back home. Well, I'm telling you right now that we're looking into hiring people who have a degree outside of the city because we want diverse perspectives, diverse opportunities, just diversity, like brains, cultures, experiences. Not just everything from Northern California. We're looking from outside of the state as well. So we highly recommend you to getting your master's degree outside of the city, going out. So I thought, okay, let me try that. Especially since I really trust like my advisors. Been given nothing but good advice from them, and it was true. Because right now, as I started applying for jobs, I noticed that a lot of the people that have been getting hired and accepted into teaching positions, they're all not from my city. So they were right on some point. Like they noticed patterns just like I noticed patterns. So I accepted my master's program at Cal State LA. And that's where I went for my master's in Chicana Latina Studies. And that program was 2 years. I was with my cohort, and most of us were queer, non binary. Um, and, the experience was very different from what I was used to. And in Northern California, where everything was predominantly male, I was always the one woman in these spaces. And it came to a space where it was just all like diverse. And I really liked it. My experience in my master's program was very difficult. Not that the work was difficult, the work was very easy. The work wasn't as difficult because you're doing it on something you're very passionate on. You're just focusing on your major classes. You're not focusing on math and history and science and English. So you're focusing just on ethnic studies. I'm Chicana Latina studies. So to me, it was really easy. I was very passionate about it. I learned a lot of things I never knew about before. You'd be surprised. Like, I never in my life have taken a feminist studies class until my master's program. So it's just, I learned a lot and I feel like I grew a lot, especially since I moved away from Northern California and moved to LA, a city of, hustle, of so many people, of diverse perspectives, and a lot of resistance and resilience. So I felt like, well, why not get my degree in the place where I'm surrounded by the environment that I'm trying to study? And I don't regret it. I really loved this experience living in LA, but I was also the only one in my family to ever leave. So that was very difficult and isolating. It was difficult to build relationships with people when I also have to work in order to sustain my livelihood because my family can't support me financially. And there's only so much that loans can do. So I had to work a lot and make sure that I had my classes and my classwork done. I was also part of the student government, and I truly loved that experience. I don't regret it at all. I sometimes felt kind of left out because I'm a little bit older than the other students, but everyone was so kind and accepting. I was able to do a really big event where I worked with the California Secretary of State, and I brought her onto campus and did a Q&A with her. It was like a dream. I really loved my experience. And I also got teaching experience. That's one of the main reasons why I decided to go to Cal State LA. In my program, they help you get teaching experience. And that's something that's a huge plus for me because I want to be a professor. So I got a lot of experiences and I made a lot of good friends and a lot of good memories. But one of the most difficult things leaving home is leaving home. You're not surrounded by your comfort zone anymore. You're not surrounded by your loved ones. You're not surrounded by your cousins and your aunts and your uncles. The cookouts you're not going to anymore, and you see them post pictures and they're all having fun without you, and you just have to live with that for a while and make it the sacrifice worth it. So I feel like reflecting on my journey, one of the biggest takes that I would share with everyone is the following. One second. Sorry, there was a siren that went off in my neighborhood, but anywho, my biggest takeaways. I actually wrote down this list and I wanted to share it with you all. Um, my biggest takeaways were I got teaching experience, something that I really wanted to do because when you apply for something, whether it's like a tech degree, an AA, a master's, a PhD, you want to get work experience in your field to see if it's something you're interested in, especially when you're investing so much theory and so much book savvy experience. You want to get life experience. So I feel like that's one of my biggest like pluses from the program was definitely getting teaching experience. I definitely got to build relationships with people that, I've made so much memories with, whether they were good memories or bad memories. One of the biggest things that I will never get over with LA is how resilient and like how people fight back. They're so, um, community oriented. And that's something I didn't really experience back home. Like, it's changing now. My city's changing now, but I feel like that's forever what's going to identify LA as LA is they're resilient. They're fighters. They're community oriented. It doesn't matter. Like one of the things forever will stand out for me. So you can be living in Inglewood, just a city near LA, right? You can be living in Inglewood, but when you hear that one of your friends is having a party in downtown LA, you drive from Inglewood to downtown LA, even if it takes you 2 hours there and for one way. If it takes you 4 hours to commute, you're going to be there for your friend. And I feel like that really stands out. And the other thing is like familyhood, familismo. I notice people, they'll take days off because they're going to go to the cookout with the kids. They're going to take them on a vacation. They haven't been around their kids for so long because they're working so much. They're going to baby showers. Like my coworkers, they flood my coworkers with gifts when it comes to like, first communion, baby showers, baptisms, quinceañeras. Like people come up with money that they don't even have and they'll contribute to these important parties. And to me that really stands out because I just never really experienced that a lot in Northern California, not even in my jobs. Everyone's kind of like they're here for themselves. But in LA, everyone's here for each other. And I feel like that's something that was very beautiful living in the city. And that's something that is my biggest takeaway from the city is how everyone is so community oriented. And you can be diverse, race, gender, ethnicity, and you are still connected. And I feel blessed that walked around those experiences. I'm sure everyone has different and unique experiences with LA, but I'm very grateful I got to have that positive experience in LA. And oh man, commuting. People do that for years. I cannot. I cannot. I take the train now. Once like the A train was built, oh my God, I stopped driving. I only drive on the weekends. And honestly, like I appreciate the train. I appreciate it because I'm tired of driving. You're so exhausted. Hey, I can read a book. I can knit. I can be on YouTube. I appreciate that train because I am not driving it and I'm not driving anymore. So that's another big takeaway is that I never expected to be using the commuting system that I commented that was so unreliable, which is why I took the 2 years off to get a car. And look at me, not even using my car anymore. So that's another takeaway is like be open to your transportation system. Yes, things happen in transportation systems, but that's due to lack of funding for support of mental health institutions and so on. So that's another talk for another day. Another thing is I'm really glad I gave myself the chance to leave home with older as I'm older. I definitely, when I look back, like I noticed that there's a lot of fear implemented on young women. They're like, oh my God, you can't leave your house. Oh my God, you can't go out like that. Oh my God, someone's gonna rob you. All these negative things. And that's just you being in your neighborhood. Oh my God, the minute I talked about like when I was an undergrad and I got accepted to San Diego, everyone freaked out. They're like, oh my God, you're gonna disappear. So that like because of fear, I limited myself. But now that I'm older, I can see like and more mature, I can see what are good situations to be in when what are bad situations to walk away from. So I feel like very grateful that I gave myself the opportunity to move out as an older person. I do wish I gave myself that experience as I was younger, but when you're younger, you're easily influenced. So I am grateful for my experience overall. I wouldn't change it. Um, I do wish I'd left a little bit earlier, like maybe 2 or 3 years ago. Not the age that I'm at now, but age, that's a whole other topic, right? But going back to my takeaways, another takeaway is just being open to new things. I'm really glad I exposed myself to new experiences and new people and new mindsets because I've never heard of half of the things I've heard of before. Had I not stayed home, and I'm really grateful for that, for the new experiences that I got, and the emphasis going back. I'm glad I gave myself the chance to leave. Some people never leave their cities because they're just afraid of the unknown, afraid of failure. And those are normal feelings to feel, but sometimes it's good to push through them. I've had a lot of difficult situations living here. Like I said, I support myself. It's very difficult, sometimes getting through the month, but I gave myself the experience to live alone too. I never thought I would experience that. And looking back at that, at these reflections of moving away, living alone, being exposed to new minds, cultures, experiences, languages, practices, customs, these are all things that my ancestors never got a chance to do. And, just to be personal, like you look back, being a Mexican woman myself, a Chicana Mexicana, and you look at my mother, who was only exposed to so little. And then you look at my grandmother, who was very limited to her life experience because she did die young. And then you look at my great grandmother, who never even had the opportunity to dream. She couldn't give herself that chance to dream because it breaks you when you realize that you do have an opportunity, but you can't take it because of customs. Whether it be you have to be a stay-at-home wife, you can't leave. What woman wears pants? Like very simple things like that we take for granted, that we just don't think about. How grateful are we to be given those chances to try? And that's why I emphasize give yourself the chance to leave, to grow, to give yourself the opportunity to experience life in a way that no one else in your family has, because that's a really big takeaway. Now that I've left and I'm getting ready to go back home, I think about how my influence of being the first one graduating from a bachelor's, from a master's, and how I'm influencing my cousins to do the same, to lead, to take advantage of all of the resources that they have, to do more than I have. Because I was just a stepping stone, but they are supposed to reach higher than me. And I'm hoping to do the same influence for the people in my community. A lot of the women in my communities don't know what anything else is outside of just being a mother, outside of just serving. Who serves them? Who serves you in here? And I'm hoping that with my influence of leaving and coming back, being more gentle to them and letting them know you have an option to dream. That's what my biggest takeaway is from this is it's okay to dream and it's okay to pursue it and it's okay to fail through it, because it's better to try and fail than to always dream and never do. So I hope that this video kind of gives you an idea that, going to higher education is not linear. But the biggest thing I can share with you all today is this is why it's important to pursue higher education, why it's important to get a bachelor's and associates. Why? The Latino community, we rarely get these opportunities. Sometimes we're too afraid to pursue them. And sometimes systemically, they don't want us to pursue education. If you look at the 1960s through 1970s, when there was really big Chicano movements throughout the Northern America, why did all of this stuff happen? We wanted equal opportunities of education. And those reasons, and because of the labors that they did, their resistance and their fights, we're benefiting from that now, which is a good thing. And that's why it's important for us to pursue higher education. We give our families the opportunity of learning new things, of growing, of the unknown, and offering them a path to something easier, because we already went through the difficult part. Now we have to make it easy for them, because that's part of paving the way. But in addition to that, exposing yourself into higher education also leads you to opportunities in different types of job markets. It leads you to studying abroad, learning a new language. Some people just go to college to learn French and then they go to France and study it over there. You would never be given those opportunities if you don't go to higher education. You'd never been giving yourself the opportunity to learn about the arts, learn about history, learn about your own history. So that's why I highly encourage higher education. It helps people like us, people who grow up in low income neighborhoods, that people study us to know that we can do more, that we're not just a study, that we're not just numbers, we're not just kids from the block. We're people who have ideas. We can contribute to society, whether it be through STEM, through science, through astronomy, like through education. We can do so much, and we just don't know it because we're not willing to. We're not. We don't have the resources. More than anything, we don't have the resources to get there. But I'm hoping that by doing this reflection, it kind of gives you that idea that higher education is not linear. My mom got really sick, and then it took me delays. And also the school was kind of pushing me out through not so helping me out through offering me accessibility, flexibility through my work, my job. Um, but I know that being here is a form of resistance, and I hope that that's a big takeaway that you get from this video today. So, thank you so much for being here. I hope that you stay along through the mini series that I'm creating, which is my post-grad diaries. Today, I gave you a reflection of what my higher education journey is. If you're interested in learning something different, something new, please let me know and follow me along through this journey. Thank you so much. Bye.